We're about halfway through the third quarter earnings season, with 49% of the companies in the S&P 500 having reported results so far. According to FactSet, 78% of the companies that have reported had actual EPS above estimates, which is just above the 5-year moving average. Revenue, on the other hand, is lagging the 5-year average, with just 62% of companies reporting revenue beats. Still, the index is reporting higher earnings for the third quarter, with growth at 2.7% following last week's big tech reports. According to FactSet, if this growth rate continues, it will mark the first quarter of year-over-year earnings growth reported by the index since Q3 of 2022. So, can the momentum continue? Well, we have a few more big tech companies this week, and Akiko and I each have our eyes on one. So I'm looking forward to AMD's earnings. They're coming out on Tuesday after the closing bell. I mean, it's going to be a lot to digest here, because some of the growth that they've seen expectedly in client and data center segments are expecting to see versus last year, the same quarter, and earnings and revenue decline widely among the analysts that we've seen. But earlier this month, some positive note here, TD Cowen analyst Matt Ramsey said, after first half of 2023 characterized by the dramatic shift that we saw in generative AI, we view the headwinds as beginning to ease, as evidenced by the company's 3Q guidance issued prior to the earnings call. So certainly looking more bullish here. And keeping in mind, obviously, the chip industry, it is cyclical. But a lot of what I'll be looking for on the earnings call is how margins have been faring, because those have been under pressure. We'll be looking to see if the worst of that margin pressure is actually behind it. And something interesting here, Cathie Wood's ARK Q ETF on Friday, buying more than $5 million in AMD ahead of this earnings season. I'll also be looking to see what's been happening with global PC shipments, because a research from Gartner shows that those have fallen 9% in the third quarter, but they are expected to recover in Q4. So I'll be looking for any sort of signs of that recovery in what we see in the forward guidance coming out of AMD as well, Akiko.
Yeah, AMD always a good indicator of not just chip demand, but overall, as you point out, the devices demand as well. The stock down just slightly today ahead of those earnings results, but it is up more than 45% on the year. And to your point, this is a company, as with many other chip makers, that have gone through, sort of a bit of a show me period here, especially on what that demand and revenue picture will look like specifically on AI. So certainly expecting a lot of commentary on that front as well. Apple, the other big one, of course, that we are watching, reporting later this week. And, this is an interesting one, Rochelle, because yes, it is about the iPhone demand, and we're going to get to that in just a bit, but it's also about sort of the overall health of the consumer. We often look to Apple as a bit of a bellwether in some ways about where the consumer is willing to shell out, especially with those high-end devices. Now, worth noting that Apple makes up roughly 7% of the S&P 500, which is why we're watching it so closely. The company has already indicated they expect another quarter of declining sales. So if, in fact, that's where it comes in terms of these latest results, the Q4 results for Apple, that would mark a full fiscal year of sales decline. Certainly not good for the company. Investors certainly going to be looking also for what that China demand is going to be looking like, because that makes up roughly 10% of the overall revenue for the company. Some commentary coming through from analysts ahead of these results. JP Morgan, Samik Chatterjee, saying that he's seen a shorter lead time for the iPhone 15 when you compare it to where the 14 was last year. He doesn't see that as a good indication of demand for the 15. Also, Tom Forte, D.A. Davidson, a friend of the show, we should point out, says he doesn't think iPhone sales are necessarily going to be a big catalyst for the stock, certainly pointing to the fact that there could be softer demand. So another stock that we're going to be watching here on a very, very busy week for earnings.